Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Garrett Taggart, and today I'm going to be doing a Docu-Demic presentation on the documentary Into the Abyss and reviewing it with scholarly journal articles in the field of criminal justice. First and foremost, I think it's important that I go over a few statistics about the criminal justice system regarding capital punishment in the United States as it currently stands. As of November 2014, there are 32 states who legalize capital punishment. There are 3,035 inmates in the United States currently awaiting execution. Since the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976, 1,389 individuals have been executed, 15 of them being women. Aside from the United States, Japan is the only other industrial democracy to allow capital punishment. Looking at recent years, 2012 saw 43 executions, 2013 saw 39 executions, and 2014 saw 32 executions in the United States. In the documentary, the producer Werner Herzog documents and highlights the issues and situations that occur regarding a triple homicide case in Texas in 2002. Michael Perry and Jason Burkett were two young males living in Texas at the time. The initial plan was to steal the car of Sandra Stotler. When the plan was taken slightly off track, they ended up murdering her and taking her body to a nearby lake and dumping it. When they went back to get the car they had intended to steal, they could not get into the gated community, so they waited for her son, Adam Stotler, and his friend, Jeremy Richardson, to arrive, and they followed them into the complex and proceeded to murder them both as well. In the documentary, there's one overarching theme that was extremely apparent to me that I think is important to talk about, and that's the theme of sadness. Throughout the documentary, Herzog interviews numerous people, and in all the cases, you can see that everyone has an extreme sense of sadness and remorse towards the situation at hand. Whether it's the daughter of Sandra Stotler or the father of Jason Burkett, every person is extremely remorseful and upset by what had happened to their loved ones and the result of it. It was important. What I did was, after reviewing this theme of sadness, I decided to look into some journal articles regarding the impact of capital punishment on family members of both the accused and the victims. And the first article I found was an article called Co-Victims of Capital Murder by Scott Vaughn in Violence Victims in 2007. It's a review of 159 cases in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice system, and what it did was it accumulated quotes from the victims' family members after witnessing the execution of the accused. And once it got all the quotations, they put it into they categorized it into statistics, which I'm going to go over a few of the statistics right now. 40.9% of the people interviewed indicated the execution brought some form of healing or closure to them. 22% indicated a conclusion to a particularly difficult time in their lives. 17% expressed peace or relief that the situation was over. 12.6% made a reference that the killing would not bring back their loved ones. 47.8% expressed dissatisfaction towards the experience as a whole. 24.5% dissatisfaction was in regard to the defendant's demeanor or statements at their execution. 3.8% said the execution would actually impede their healing process, while 27% thought that the execution was the proper way to remove the condemned from society. 14.5% said they could not or would not forgive the condemned, while 11.9% said they did forgive the person. 13.8% of the individuals made a comment expressing sympathy towards the family members of the accused and the feeling of losing a loved one. As you can see from those statistics right there, that in just those 159 cases, there are an extreme variance of emotions, and not every case is the same, and not every person feels the same way about the situations that occur or capital punishment as a whole. Another article that I found very interesting. It's called "The Impact of Capital Punishment on Families" by Rachel King in 2006, and she highlighted two major aspects that that majorly affect the family members of the loved ones. The first is the inequality of sentencing in the United States. She talks about the case of Manny Babbitt, who is a U.S. citizen who was born in Camp Verde Islands. He was served in the U.S. military, and he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder upon returning. One night, he broke into the house of an elderly woman named Leah Schneidel, and essentially scared her to death by intruding in her house. He did not impose any physical harm on her, but the fact that he did have he contributed to her death landed him on death row. The real contradictory issue arose when during his sentencing. In the room next to him, two white men had raped and murdered two women, and they only received life in prison while he was sentenced to death. This case brought to light the inequality of sentencing and also possible racial issues or undertones that may attribute to the disparity in sentencing. The second issue she talked about was the tearing of family ties that come from capital punishment cases, and she used the case of Virginia State Trooper Jerry Hines, who was murdered in the line of duty by Dennis Eaton. Dennis Eaton was sentenced to death row for his transgressions, but Maria Hines, the wife of the late Jerry Hines, did not agree with capital punishment, and she essentially worked with Mr. Eaton on his case to try to get him off death row and became his spiritual advisor. Well, when she did this, it did not go over well with the rest of the Hines family, and Maria was ostracized from the family, and to this day, she still has no contact with the family. The family wants nothing to do with her, and the ties are completely severed between the two parties, which is extremely sad. And you can see the strain that this type of high sensitivity case can put on a family or families. Another issue from the documentary that I would like to highlight is the debate about capital punishment and its effect on deterring crime. In multiple points during the documentary, individuals are quoted as saying that they do not believe that taking someone's life is going to deter anyone else from committing crimes or heinous crimes, murder. They believe that people are going to do what as they choose, and the fact that the death penalty is a possibility does not essentially deter anyone from committing the crimes. The first article I found was Deterrence and the Death Penalty, the Views of Experts. It was published in the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology. What this study did was it took former and present presidents of three criminal justice associations: the American Society of Criminal Justice, Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences, and Law and Society Association, and they interviewed 71 of, like I said, former and present presidents of these three, and asked them multiple choice questions regarding the death penalty and if they believe it acts as a deterrent. And I have some of the questions they asked, and I'm going to read the results. First question was, does the death penalty act as a deterrent? 11.9% said yes, while 67% said no. And then it said, abolishing the death penalty in a particular state would not have any significant effects on the murder rate in that state. 32.8% said, I think it's true, while 53.7% said, I'm sure it's true. Third question was, politicians support the death penalty as a symbolic way to show they are tough on crime. 38.8% said totally accurate, while 61.2% said that was largely accurate, and 0% said that the statement was inaccurate. Another question was, the death penalty significantly reduces the number of homicides. 0% said it was accurate, 41.8% said it was largely inaccurate, and 52.2% said it was totally inaccurate. If you basing your judgment off of that article, you would have to think that, as far as the expert opinion goes, that the capital punishment does not act as a deterrent towards crime. There's another case that I found called "Does the Death Penalty Save Lives?" by Tomislav Kovacic. He reviewed 6 empirical articles from 2000 to 2006. Out of the 6 articles, 4 of them found a positive correlation between death penalty and deterrence. One's test was not significant, and the study of Oakland, Jackson, and Reisler of 2006 actually stated that the presence of a death penalty actually increases the likelihood of crime. Along with reviewing these 6 articles, Docu-Demic and his team also instituted their own evaluation of the statistics, and their study they compared execution risk and homicide rates, and the study showed actually similar findings as the Donahue and Wolfler study that stated that there was not a significant correlation between the two. There was one factor that they looked to as a possible reason as to why they got the results they did, and they said there could be factors that positively correlate execution risk and homicide rate, such as the crack epidemic of the late 1980s that they did not account for in their study that could have affected their findings on the issue. Another issue I'd like to bring up regarding the documentary was that throughout the documentary you could get the sense that Mr. Herzog was definitely anti capital punishment. He believed that capital punishment was inhumane and no one should be put to death. So I thought it was important to take his view and compare it to the views of the nation and see if they are similar. A nationwide poll by a Global Information Network found that 61% of individuals surveyed prefer other methods of punishment over the death penalty. 38% would support a representative who supported the repeal of death penalty, while 24% said that it would not affect their decision. 68% of the individuals who would choose another form of punishment stated that the main reason was due to the expensive costs that go into housing and housing and sentencing those on death row. So I think it's important to look at some of the numbers on how much some states actually spend on death row inmates and the process. In California has the largest number of death row inmates at 669, and only 13 have been executed since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976, with an average of $1.1 million more per case compared to other non-death penalty cases. Also, Florida estimated the state paid out $51 million annually enforcing the death penalty, where in Washington they stated that it cost $467,000 more to try a death penalty case over any other case in their state. So just looking at those numbers right there, you can see that a lot of money is poured into these cases, and whether it's for a just cause or not is up for debate, and that's where a lot of the issues arise. When looking at the financial issue, I found an interesting study by Jolie McLaughlin of the Northwestern University Law Review, and what she did was she compared the current state of capital punishment with the interest convergence model. What the interest convergence model is it's basically it's a concept that states that people of power or people that are in power making decisions will not change their viewpoint or work towards a reform until that issue meets up with their personal needs or the needs of the greater good. An example of that is that if you look at the civil rights movement and desegregation in the United States, the interest conversion model states that the reason for desegregation was not due to the fact that it was the right thing to do for African Americans in the United States. It was actually because the policymakers in the United States at the time wanted to create a good image of the United States and raise economic growth in the South. Therefore, this is why they desegregated, because to uphold their image and because it would benefit them financially. If you take that model, you can somewhat apply it to the way that the United States is moving with in regards to the death penalty and capital punishment. The costs are becoming so high, and the country's not financially stable at the moment. So once the stability of the country declines enough to where the costs of keeping capital punishment intact meet, then that is when you will see a change in the death penalty, when the cost becomes too high for the economy to bear. Then you will start seeing reform on the death penalty, according to this study. That is it for my Docu-Demic presentation. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informational and interesting. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great evening.